Welcome, everybody, to This Meeting Should Have Been a Podcast. We're back with another episode. We're excited to bring our eternal knowledge to the world. I don't know if we can really call it there.
Yeah.
But I'm Tom Schin, along with my co-host, Tom Horne. We've been at this for a couple of months now and having a lot of fun, sharing some pearls of wisdom, some good laughs, some great stories with fabulous guests. Tom, how you making out today?
You know what? I am doing great. I feel like I had to come last time I was dressed like a CFO, so I feel like I had to get my comfy day sweater on, throw on a smashy hat for a bluegrass band, and just take it back a notch. So I'm feeling pretty relaxed, pretty good today. Appreciate you asking.
Little Moon Travelers, I like it.
Yeah, they're out of Steamboat. Really good folks. Yeah, really good folks. Check them out. Little Moon Travelers, love those guys.
Awesome.
And gals.
Awesome. And gals.
Their singer is a fiddle player. She sings a couple songs, and she crushes.
I'm always amazed at folks that can fiddle and sing at the same time. Like that Lindsay Sterling. I don't know that she actually sings, but seeing her perform and dance and all that stuff, I'm like, how? Because I grew up playing stringed instruments, violin, viola, all that stuff. I'm like, it was all that I could manage or muster to pay attention to the timing of where I was at in a piece. And then you got lost. Good luck. But anyway, I want to
welcome Kat, because I bet she.
Yeah.
I bet they have some musical interests to throw into this convo.
Yeah, Kat Kibben is joining us today, and we're excited to have you here. Kat is owner of 3 Ears Media, has 2 books now out, with one just recently, had spent 3 years on the road, which we're going to dive into that. So, Kat, welcome. Thanks for being here. Tell us a little bit, what you've been up to and what's going on with 3 Ears Media and so forth.
Yeah, so you covered it. I work at a company called 3 Ears Media. It's named after 2 dogs with 4 ears, and I always clarify that because I had a really awkward conversation after a keynote once. 4 ears. And I'm a keynote speaker and author, and I specialize in kind of the world of recruiting and candidate experience, really clarity of messaging. So it's all writing at its core and how we talk about work. And that's what I do every day is I read, research, write, and speak about recruiting best practices and then go back to teams and we actually execute on those. I feel like I've become kind of a mad scientist lately because so many of the problems I'm getting asked about aren't one solution problems. We're looking at an entire process and changing it. And the best part is my clients let me kind of screw around with their process until we know it works the way we want it to. And we don't expect to always hit home runs on the first swing. And it's been really, really fun. It's kept my brain hyperactive.
Oh yeah. Like talent acquisition's at that super interesting intersection of everything's always in need of change and changing, and everything's just going to be the same forever.
Yeah.
It somehow is on both of those steps at the same time. It's a crazy space.
We've always done it this way is the most toxic one-liner that everyone uses. And I think we are on the verge of actually seeing a shift because AI is requiring us to rethink that point solution system that we worked in forever. Like when I first walked into the world of recruiting, everybody wanted to talk about sourcing tools. Tom, I believe we go all the way back to this, right? And so if you held a webinar about sourcing tools, you'd have 500 people show up, right? And it was literally one tool, one problem, one answer kind of thing. And now AI is requiring us to say wait, did your process even work? Because it's not able to execute at a rhythm. If I just turned it on, it couldn't just do it. And that makes people realize, oh, actually that process never worked in the first place.
It's amazing. Like the flashes that are going, since we're winding the clock back, Kat, Batman Cohen, he's a big sourcer. At least he was 5 years ago. I haven't paid that close attention over the last couple of years since I've been out of that TA space, but I'd be really intrigued to find out what's going on in his world on the sourcing side, since so much has changed so rapidly over the last 18 months that sourcing world has just got to be turned on its head. And I know a lot of my recruiter friends are, it's not that they're drowning, but it's not easy out there. It is a lot of feast and famine. And so you have to deal with those. We've always done it that way. I'm having glitches in my memory of customers who would say, "Oh, we want to change this. We like what you're saying." And then I go back to the way they were doing it. I'm like, No, no, no. This is not what you signed up for. You told us to kind of get you in the right direction, which is what we're doing, but you're going backwards."
Yeah, that's so painful. You know, both of you know this. I was a job post writing expert for many, many years. I just hyper
Yeah, I was going to take you
specialized.
back to that.
Yeah, and
I wanted to learn. I wanted to talk about that for a sec.
well,
Good, thank you.
well, and over the last year, I've realized for exactly what you just said, Tom. It's like I can't just write one job posting because that doesn't actually fix anything. Even if it fixes the pipeline for that one role and they get more qualified people, the next job posting usually goes exactly back. And unless they're feeling that pain point, it's just not solving the problem. And so I really had to take a step back because, you know, I actually have dreams of creating impact with my work, not just showing up and getting my check and then
There we go. Love it.
high five, fingers crossed.
I mean, I
So
like the check.
I
The
like the
check is
check
good.
too, but I also like results. Like, I don't know about you guys, but it's really hard for me to stay committed to something I don't think works. And I think there's
Yeah.
a lot of people
My
out
LinkedIn will
there,
answer my side of that.
right? Like, there's a lot of people out there who are willing to commit to something just because that's the way they've always done it. And they get the pipeline of people asking them to do it. So they just keep doing it. And for me, like, that's an easy formula to make me really, really unhappy.
I get reminded of that old because even at home, there are things I have my kids load the dishwasher a certain way because that's the way it gets cleanest. But inevitably, my wife will like, "You load it." I'm like, "I don't want to load it," and
Ooh,
I'll
ooh,
realize that
I,
my way's not the only way. I just don't want to admit it. She doesn't listen to this stuff, so we can talk about her all we
wait,
want.
I got a question before you. Are you a forks silverware pointed down or silverware pointed up person? Because I have like super strong opinions on that.
I go up.
You go up, Kat?
I also am up because my girlfriend is convinced that they don't actually get clean if they're pointed down.
All right. See, I am a super strong down on this topic, and always ready to defend my thesis on that too.
All right,
But
defend it. How does everything in that little caged box get clean when they're
all
all
right. So here's first question: the thing that spins and shoots up all the hot water and all the soap. Where is that located on the tray? Under it or above it?
Under.
both?
Oh, you
So
got the fancy one.
when it's pointed down, well, the one above usually is shooting up. The one pointed down has to go through all the handles and everything to get to the part that goes in your mouth if it's pointed up, because it's coming from bottom up. So that's my big one right there. The second one is once it's clean, then you take your grubby ass hands and then you're grabbing the clean part that goes in your mouth to take it out and put it away. So that's my two defense. I'm happy to hear a counter and take over the entire show on this topic.
Kat, I'll let you go first.
No, I actually just watched this little like YouTube video about hand air dryers, and they did this test where they swabbed just the air after somebody used one of those. So I will not go into detail because it'll probably make gag.
Please do not.
But Tom is onto something. That's all I'll say about that.
Okay,
I'll take that.
I'll concede part of that. I wash my hands before I empty the dishwasher. It drives me nuts when
I would say
somebody
you're in
else
the
comes along and
minority, but
hasn't, right?
that's what you should
So
do.
I agree with you on the cleaning part. My dishwasher sprays up and down. So that part, I guess it depends on the dishwasher that you have. But I get your point. I guess it there's validity to it. Again, and to that point of we don't always know everything. It's just how we've been doing it, and that's our philosophy, and we run with it. But yeah, I could see that. But for me, like I have those caged boxes. There's only the knife can go down. Everything else is just the handle that fits. I'd have to open up the cage, and then my other fear is when you stick all the
Mhm.
spoons in the box, they all just glom together.
Mm-hmm. All right. I mean, I think there's good points. GPT also wrote down that it's safer when the sharper stuff is pointed down, knives and forks.
Yep.
Honestly,
So
I think there's good here. All right, that's good. I'll let us get back to the actual conversation. That's
This
like
will
one of
be the
those. Like,
silverware episode.
it's like the silver. It's
of
one of those
all
things I
the
get really
things,
passionate about. All right,
You didn't
so
know this is what you were signing up for.
back into results oriented, I think is where I took us. off board. No, Kat, I think that's amazing, right? Like so many people just work. I remember one of the things I learned was there's a big difference between being busy and getting shit done. And I feel like what we're talking about is the macro of that. I think both kind of need to be there, at least for me, when I approach work. Like I want to sit here and talk about silverware on a podcast, but if the overall podcast isn't driving conversations and making things better, then I don't want to do it either.
Entrepreneurship is not for the weak of heart, right? Like, this is a choice and it's not always a fun one. And I realized a couple years in, like, if I'm not going to love this, if I'm not going to build a business I like running, it's probably not worth doing. I can go get a job. That's not the problem. The problem is that I want to do highly impactful work and I have some really specific ideas about what that is. And my next employer might not agree with me, and I don't really want to argue about that just yet.
Let me ask you, you bring that up in terms of my next employer or my next client may not enjoy that. I've always taken the philosophy of I'm going to be as me as I can be. And if you like it, great, we're going to get along. If I have to pretend to be somebody else, you're not going to get 100% me. And this isn't going to be an enjoyable relationship. So why bother chasing that? So I've had folks get really careful about LinkedIn posts, what they write on a resume. We'll tie it back to your universe. But what are your thoughts on that?
I I think as a queer person who spent most of my life doubting who I was, not just what I did, but literally like who my identity in this world, who I wanted to be, who I wanted to love, all of those things. I think because I did so much of that up front, I was probably a little more, the transition felt easier because I never imagined a world in which I was going to pretend at work. I People who've worked with me know I have always been a little louder than everyone else. I have always said the thing. Okay, picture this. I had a manager who told me that I was too big for my britches when I asked for a promotion. And I actually looked him dead in the eye and said, "You wouldn't say that to me if I was a man." I,
Yeah.
I he wouldn't have. There's no world in which a man would tell another man not to ask for a promotion and that he was being too aggressive when he asked for the next rational step in his career, right?
Yeah.
I'm the
Yep.
person who goes, I don't think that works. And it hasn't always made for me to be like the most liked, but people knew they could trust that they would get the right results. And I think that's the consequence of what you're talking about is like when I show up fully as myself, when I meet someone in real life and they go, "Oh my God, you're just like you are online." I'm like, yeah, it's a lot of work to pretend to be something else on the internet. Like, I just don't have the energy for that, and it translates into the work I get because the people who call me don't call me with, "Well, I'm not sure we'll adapt to this change." They kinda know they're gonna have someone call BS, and you either want that or you don't.
Right. Right. I love it.
Well, that's the same thing, in the TA world, right? Like when you go to an interview, how much do you want to just make them like you and make them get you to the next step versus also like make sure it's a right fit? And I feel like that's one of the places where both companies and job seekers get it wrong because it is a mix. It's not 100% in either direction. You've got to figure out like what that balance is. And I think that's one of the toughest things on both sides. So if I turn that back into a question for you, Kat, like how do you coach companies against bringing this bias or looking for all the same kind of X, Y, and Z? Ooh, they're bubbly. That's what we're looking for. Versus, are they the best person for the job? And then on the converse side. So, would you mind talking about, give me your thoughts on both sides of that coin?
Yeah. I obviously bias is always gonna be part of it because that's how humans make decisions. That's kind of the rhythm of it, and one of the most effective ways I have seen teams figure out how to navigate this. Yes, soft skills, which I air quote because I just read a book about the origin of soft skills and they actually came from the military. Because it was literally if you were using ammunition, it was a hard skill. And if you were not using ammunition, it was a soft skill. And that was the origin of that phrase, which blew my mind. And then I was like, why do we keep using that? I digress. So The number one most effective tactic I have seen when it comes to making these decisions is to simply define what good means up front. It's to create a chart, write down every single interview question, and then you're going to write down what a good answer to that question is. You're going to write down soft skills. You're going to write down questions that verify soft skills, and then you're going to write down a good answer. And defining all of that before you ever talk to a human gets you to a more rational and data-based decision when it comes to hiring than pretty much anything I have ever seen.
I relate very much to what you said there because I can remember gobs and gobs of time where you have a manager. Let me interview Joe. Let me interview Susie. Immediately, they're biased without having set those stakes in the ground. Well, I like Joe's personality, but Joe didn't have as strong a background. Yeah, but I think he got it. Versus Susie, well, she has some experience, but it's not exactly the same. Like she has more experience,
That
and you run into bias conversations, and they just can't. They can't unpack it, and they can't see that they're the ones causing this trouble. Versus, let's get in front of it, as you said. Let's define what good is. Dan Martell writes about definition of done, so I relate it to that. Sort of, what does this package need to look like? What's our 80% need to look like?
Well, and there's one more factor here is we start comparing people to people instead of people to job. And that's actually your
Ooh.
responsibility when you're interviewing
Mhm.
is to compare a person to the likely outcomes of this job and say, can they do it? Do they want to do it? And we get so far off of that with these like interview panels where we're comparing candidates. Again, it is not them versus them. It's them versus the job. And that's one of those like
Yep.
just little reframes that teams don't naturally orient to because we weren't actually taught how to hire.
Do you have one of those like cheering sound effects, Tom, you can like throw in here? Like that's
Oh, we might.
I
We
don't know what
might.
kind
I
of
know
controls you have, but like
we
that's how
have
I'm feeling right now.
here.
Here,
I have another follow-up question while we're on the bias piece. So my company I work at, Harry, we have talent acquisition, workforce management, all for the frontline worker. Absolutely love the space. I feel like I'm doing the right stuff, as we were talking about earlier, every day going to work. But with the evolution of talent acquisition, AI is getting more and more in there, from automated screening question software, automated selection, automated, let's whittle this down before we even talk to anybody. And, bias is the big thing I keep hearing about that. Like AI is getting its butt kicked on bias, but also human beings, as you stated earlier, are biased as heck. And yet I feel like, again, I'm not letting AI off the hook, but I feel like the conversations are like, oh, AI is bad because it's biased. I'm like, well, the other option's humans, which we also know is biased. Like, how's that line draw?
yeah.
Like, and is AI are they being held appropriately accountable and people aren't, or are neither being held appropriately? Like, where's that line? What's your opinion on AI in that bias conversation?
Well, I would say broadly, the research suggests that people are not aware enough of the bias in AI. So the latest stat I read is that 56% of people believe that AI can remove bias. And then I just giggle, right? Because there's no world in which a system that's trained on biased data can correct for an outcome that has zero bias. That's just a reality. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. And that's the part that I think people are not digging deep enough on is the fact that some biases are really good if they are informed by data that actually indicates what good means, right? And I think
Mhm.
to take it one step higher than that, too often we look at AI as the thing to remove bias instead of looking at it as this is a process that has bias. Okay, great. Now let's go through each decision step and figure out if we can make a good decision or we have enough data that AI can make this decision well. And that's the part where we
Got it.
actually
Yep.
start to mitigate bias is when we look at how decisions are made, what data do we use to make that decision, get really rigorous about that. It goes back to the defining what good means on the interview too. right? Again, I said,
Yep.
this is what good means. We know that. And if I can define that, yeah, I could have AI execute if this is a good answer to the question because I told the AI what that was.
So people are assuming it's basically a counter to people's assumption that, oh, well, AI doesn't have bias, which is why we're digging into it so much, because people are just incorrectly assuming and projecting this will solve everything. And it's like, whoa, 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 hold your horses. It can
Yeah.
solve a lot. Let's just be real about what it is.
Well, know what AI is good at and know what people are good at. That's the core of it that nobody is spending time
Right.
talking about. And frankly, that is the topic I spend the most time nerding out on. And when I get up in the morning, when I go to the gym, I'm listening to podcasts, and they are not from, no offense to the HR podcasters, because both of you are lovely, but they're from scientists. They're from researchers. They're from psychologists who are talking about this because they have data. They have
Yeah.
data about what humans are good at. They have data about what machines are good at. And we just don't have that information because our data set is bunk as hell because it starts with those job postings that I couldn't even rewrite to make better.
Well, and it comes down to
Boom.
when you think about the concept of computers not making mistakes, computers only do what you tell them to do. And so when they're out searching, and all AI is doing is it's a faster Google search, if you want to look at it in that realm, tell me what's out there. It's going to tell you what's out there, but what's out there could be Wikipedia land. It could be
Yes.
a bunch of biased information that somebody's opinion statements caught into their feed and is swayed that way. But anyway, I go
And it's
down, I
dangerous
have
as
that argument
hell.
all the time.
The way
Yeah.
I like to think about it is Google, but one question, one answer. And that is dangerous because that's cool when I'm on Netflix and I want to watch a
Right.
series about the cartel. That is totally different when I ask one question about people and I get one answer and pretend it's right. You
Yeah.
know, Brene Brown, she did this chat with Adam Grant and she was talking about how she had an AI researcher and then a people research team for her latest book. And her AI research team, 70% of the stats it spit back were bunk.
Ugh, I believe it.
70. So think about that. Anybody who's listening to this, you're using AI to pull your data to make your business case. 70% of the stats that they pulled in researching that book were not true or real. When they tried to dig back, there was no attribution to that data. Now think about all these HR tech companies building algorithms with data that's not even true or real based off of GPTs.
Well, what happened to the days where I'm going back to my publishing days? You had to cite references, even academic time, right?
Yeah.
It was. You had to cite references and this and that and the other and the research behind it, and it had to be in this journal or that encyclopedia. But it was researched, proven to a point. It's gone now. And we're not teaching students, whether they're in grade school, middle school, high school, college, we're not giving them that education where they really need to challenge the information that's out there to make sure that it is valid. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I paused. I was doing something for work and using GPT, and I saw like one of the sources. It's like, we're looking through Reddit. I was like, oh my God, no, no.
Not there. Stop. Well, I read about this one company who literally one of their competitors got into a Reddit feed that they were using as an FAQ. It took them about 12 prompts to use ChatGPT to completely manipulate all of the data and basically kill their FAQ for them. I mean,
You know, I actually think. Do you mind if I give us a little pivot here? Because I think we've like set it up so well.
hit me.
Yeah.
Word on the street is Kat has written a book.
Did not use
That's
AI to
what I'm
write the
hearing.
book. Just to be very,
That's what
very
I'm hearing.
clear, not one page.
And the pivot here is one of the big things you take out of the book in here is how to navigate uncertainty with confidence. And I think all this AI stuff we're talking about, all of this change, all of this, everything we've talked about in the first 20 minutes here, I think really does lead to that point. Would you agree? And did you actually write this book?
Yes, I actually wrote every single pet sentence. I did not use AI at all on this book. I used it to write the back cover because I really hate trying to write summary content. That's just one of those ones that it's not my strong suit to be like, here's a tagline of 14 buzzwords that make you want to buy this off the shelf, right? But all the pages on the inside the covers, all me. And I wrote this book because I realized that my anticipation of what was ahead, that fear factor of like, I don't know what's coming. I don't know what to focus on. I don't know what to fill in the blank of whatever that fear was. It was changing how I made decisions as a manager, as a human being in my life. And it was causing a lot of dissatisfaction in my career. I picture this, right? I did the type A accelerator career. Okay. I have two military parents, you can imagine. Rigor was part of the plan. So at 28, I'm a VP of marketing. I have a team of 6. I've done all the things that I thought I was supposed to do. Check, check, check. And I hated it. I hated it. I like doing work. I like writing. I like creating things. And the higher your title gets, the less you get to do anything. The joke I made is the C in front of my name. If it just stood for see me for problems you don't want to solve, that you do not want to do on your own, that you don't want to Google, you see me for that problem, right? And so I started just doing things because I wanted to. Then I build my own business, right? I've checked all those boxes. I'm making money. I have a team. And I still felt the exact same way. And the reality was, it wasn't about the work. I don't even know that it was about what I was doing every single day. It was the fact that I was constantly anticipating the next step. And I had absolutely no idea how to self regulate out of that. And the consequence was toxic leadership traits because I was copying and pasting all these things that everybody else taught me to do when I got stressed. When I saw my managers get stressed, what they do? Yell at people, get frustrated, you know?
Slam doors, all that.
And I wasn't doing it out loud, but I was doing it in the privacy of my home. I was hitting end on that call and screaming profanities, you know? I was all of these things that I could just see in myself. And I'm like, if I checked all the boxes and I'm still unhappy, there's something else here. And that's what prompted me to pack up all of my stuff. This is a little unconventional, I'd say, which is I packed up all my stuff and moved into a van and traveled the country for 3 years, not realizing the ultimate lesson would be that I 100% know how to navigate uncertainty now.
It's you and
Love
I
that.
had that conversation about that travel piece, both as a military, I don't know if your parents were officers, but the military brat per se, right? Every 3, 4 years, base to base to base to base. So there's some part of that, but in your 3-year journey, what was the longest point where you stayed in one location, and how did you come out of that to come back to non-van life? We'll say back to kind of a little bit of normalcy to what everyone else is accustomed to.
Yeah. Well, in the first year of van life, I moved every 3 days. And when I was a kid,
Ooh,
I moved 13 times before I graduated high school. So I was very, very good at moving, but moving in a van and moving your whole life are actually completely different and both complicated in their own ways. So the first year, I moved almost every 3 days until I got to Montana. And then I fell in love with Montana. And I thought I'd be out of there in a week. And I ended up staying almost 8 weeks in Montana because I
sweet.
loved it. I just loved it. I loved the mountains. I loved all of it. And that kind of got it in my head that this trip should be about finding home, not just seeking the next destination, but truly trying to find what home feels like. Because obviously I wasn't well versed in that from my childhood experience. Uh,
Yeah.
and so what I did after kind of the year and a half mark is I started spending 3 to 5 months in places. So I spent 3 months living on the beach during the winter. That was awesome. Highly recommend.
You poor thing.
Right. Then I did
Been
like
there.
3 months living in my girlfriend's hometown to just like see what it would be like to stay in one place for an extended period of time and really seeking out what home felt like, not just seeking the next transition, because I think that that was like a hard mindset to get out of, is that I was supposed to be moving just because I had the van.
Yeah. Well, and I think people forget the fact that you're still running your business this whole
Yeah.
time, still
Full
writing.
time.
How many times? Right. You and I, there's, I know you write a ton. Give us a little perspective on how much actual, blogs, articles, pieces, like give us a flavor of that so people can understand really when you say you're a writer, you really are.
And a full consulting firm. Right. So
Mhm.
I publish twice a week, every single week. one that is recruiting oriented and one that's more work-life balance kind of oriented, because I don't actually think there's a difference between the two of them. On top of that, I was running a full client load. So consulting projects where we are rewriting hundreds of job postings, redesigning their process, redesigning their templates, doing hiring manager intake meetings. And I'm a speaker, right? And I remember that first year, it really blew my mind because some part of me thought no one would hire me if they knew I lived in a van. Like, we can't have the van person teaching and training. Like, they're not going to have reliable Wi Fi, right? I trained almost every single week that first year. And so I'd be in the van and then marching into a Marriott and like sitting in a lobby for 2 hours or staying at some like crappy little courtyard so that I knew I would have
Yeah, you can do
reliable
it these days.
Wi-Fi. For sure. But think about this. This was 2021. This was the first year after the pandemic. And all of us were still in that, like, is the world just going to like turn back? Are we going to live like this forever? Like, could we be remote forever? A lot of
Yep.
unknowns, you know?
Montana's got to be really attractive in 2021, especially.
It was amazing because there's no people.
Yeah.
I love to argue
Two
with-
questions. I guess kind of three questions, which is like totally the worst interviewing thing you can do. Best place, worst place. You don't have to give full names on the worst place if you don't want to like throw, someone's hometown. No, I'm just kidding. Someplace under the bus. And then finally, what does home feel like? So kind of a
love
fun
that.
question and a real deal question.
Yeah. So the best place, it depends what you're looking for, right? And I know it depends. For me,
Yeah, this is your opinion. Yes, this is like
I feel like,
not a judgment.
so there's a place called Valley of Fire that is 1 hour outside of Las Vegas, and it feels like going to another world. If you are a Star Wars fan, if you're a sci-fi movie fan, this needs to be on your list. So you fly into Vegas, you rent
I'm
a
checking it
car,
out. It looks nuts.
and you'll drive out
I'm
there.
writing this down.
It's like, y'all, it's like desert, and all of a sudden you are in a Star Wars movie and you're expecting like a tiny little Ewok to crawl out from behind this. It's absolutely incredible. Okay.
Hopefully an Ewok.
I know, right? And I think the worst place. Well, Kansas is
Or the
just
least
super
fit.
boring. My least favorite are basically like this little row between Colorado and Illinois, okay? Because they're just boring, especially if you're driving. So it's like Kansas, nothing. Missouri, nothing. Iowa, nothing. Nebraska,
It's the fact
nothing
they are
on
all
nothing.
right there. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
the sequence of all of them in a row that makes them really painful because about halfway you have to stop, especially because my van couldn't go over 75 and the speed limit is 75 out there. It was
Yep.
slow.
So I'm in Colorado. You were in Colorado.
I
So
was.
just to be totally fair to Kansas, Eastern Colorado or Western Kansas, as some of us call
It
it.
is Western Kansas. That's what I think Tom
Does
and I
get
were talking
lumped
about
into
that.
that.
I'm like, they should have just kept it. They could have kept it. Eastern Montana is the same way. You're like, so cool, so cool, so cool. Wyoming, same thing. You're in the Tetons. You're like, this is the coolest place I've ever been. You drive right out and it's nothing. It's like there's a fine line across that. And to answer your question about what home
Another good one.
feels like, which I love that question, is I think it's going to feel a little bit different to everyone. But for me, it feels like going to a place that made you feel really safe when you were a kid. So I think every child has this secret safe place. Maybe it was a hiding place. For me, it was my grandparents. Like my grandma's house was my safe place. I knew I could just run in there. I didn't knock on the door. It felt like going home. Even though we moved all the time, it's like that's where we went back every holiday. That's where we went for special things. And I think there's just a really special sensation when you feel deeply safe. And so to me, that's what home feels
Yeah.
like, is when you feel deeply safe in the company of others.
Fantastic. I
great.
love that. You made me picture that exact thing for me, right? Like,
Yeah, right? It's so special that like the sensation of freedom that comes from feeling deeply safe. And our country is constantly changing in a way that I think drains that feeling of safety out. But if you find that in a place, I think you got to lock in, right? And fight and stay in your place, because those provide us the foundation that allows us to create the things that we are intended to create, to like have that divine purpose in our life. I feel like that's the foundation you need to fulfill that.
I'm sort of feeling like I need to move all the suitcases out from under the stairs and build myself a little cave. Because for me as a kid, I hid under the stairs. Like, no way am I going to get found. And I would barricade myself, but it was probably a bit more traumatic than I'm remembering. So I'm
Right.
going to go talk to somebody afterwards. Thanks, Kat. Thanks.
No, but seriously though, it's like you got to find your place, and we all deserve that, and you should seek that out. I remember being really really shocked when I found out that almost 60% of Americans have never left a 100-mile radius of their home.
I believe it.
Yeah, that's always been my goal. I grew up at a military base. I had actually kind of the opposite experience because my dad was a professor at West Point,
Okay.
and all my friends would move every 3 years, and I stayed put.
Yeah.
So my home was always the same, but the people I was surrounded with was constantly changing, and it was really crazy. And some people would be coming from Korea or going to Germany, or uh, and I was always thankful that like I got to stay
Yeah.
and meet all these new people without having to like change my location. So part of it was really hard, but part of it I did recognize and go, wait a minute, this is great. Like I get to travel without traveling. So as I got older, I was like, okay, now I'm ready to freaking travel. Like I need to see some stuff.
Well, and
Yeah.
I was doing a podcast a couple weeks ago where they were asking me how they think that influenced or helped me be successful in my career, the moving all the time. And I think you and I probably got the similar benefit, is that you learn how to build connections on it. Actually prepared us to be able to build real connections digitally. Right? So you and I have known each other forever. We haven't like hung out, we haven't gone to dinner, we haven't whatever, but we feel connected. I feel like I know things about you. I know stories about you, but we've only met in this digital environment. Tom and I sat around and talked for like 30, 40 minutes, just shooting the breeze, learning about each other, sending each other resources. And I think being a child of military parents actually gives you some special tool sets to not just build digital casual liking relationships, but to build deep connections even through
Yeah.
a digital interface.
So, Kat, I want to reel us back to the book, The Bounce Back Factor. And if there are three things that you want readers to really pay attention to in that book, because we've touched on different elements of it. I know you talk about some of these elements because I've read a couple of the sample chapters when you're putting all this stuff together. But what would those three things be? Two or three things that really stood out for you? Like, this is really what I want you to get across when you read this.
Yeah. You know, I think the first thing I want people to realize is that leadership is not an autonomous act. So often, when it comes to leadership, I think there's a perception that because you are the leader, you can't rely on anyone else, or that you're supposed to know all the answers because you're the leader. Why'd they promote you into that position if you just need everyone else
Hmm.
to do the work for you? You're both nodding because I'm sure you've heard some of this before. And leadership is not an autonomous act because life is not autonomous. We require community. We need each other. And I think that was one of those things in van life that I figured out pretty quickly because I thought van life was going to be an autonomous act. I thought this was my ultimate independence journey, right? I'm going out by myself into the world. And the reality is, I had to rely on people a lot more than I ever have.
Right.
Another big one is that you can't let failure hold as much power as it does. I think often we let failure become an ending and a finish line. And the reality is that when you are navigating uncertainty, failure is inevitable. And I heard this from someone else and I don't know the source, but I really love this, so I'm going to steal it. And now we can just attribute it to me. It's innovation, if you say it enough, innovation requires speculation. And we, by everyone's terms, this is not me coming up with some deep hypothesis. This is researchers in AI. This is philosophers. This is historians. These are the future technologists. They all believe we are entering a new era of change. So our society since the 1700s has run on a cycle where we have 25 years of deep innovation, 80 years of surviving the consequences of those and the evolution that comes from deep change. Then we go back to the 25 years. 2025 is the first year of another 25-year period, according to that cycle. And if you're
I mean, that feels
approaching,
right.
yeah, right?
I don't disagree on the
All the
surface.
Now
millennials
we're
are
getting
like,
really deep.
um, I sigh in millennial. I deep wide in millennial, but I'm tired of all of the change, but I digress. We can't let failure hold that much power when we are entering eras of innovation. It will hold you down. And I think the last one is kind of the theme of the whole book, which is in order to thrive in your life, no matter your path, whether you're a leader, an individual contributor, a frontline worker, or anything else, I fundamentally believe that you must know how to navigate uncertainty with confidence to have a happy life. And that's really what I want is as much as I want you to be better at work, I want you to be a better human because when we get the tools we need at work to make ourselves better, to heal ourselves, what we do is we go home and we're kinder to our kids. We're kinder to our partners and we make happier societies. And that's should be the goal of all businesses is to make the world a little better, not just your bottom line and your profit. And I dream of a world in which we hold ourselves accountable to that, that our accountability is not just to a profit and a P&L, but to making people better so that they can go live happy lives. That's the thing I'm most proud of with this book and this training is that people come back to me and tell me how much it changes how they live at home, not just at work.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
I like
Uh,
that phrase that you put in there, how to navigate uncertainty with confidence, because that confidence eventually leads to competence. And you relay that as a leadership professional to everyone else. It's a trickle down effect, a ripple effect, where they as the kids, the employees, anybody that you're around, they learn that vibe and take it with them and sort of the pay it forward type of mentality.
Yeah. Think about who you call when shit goes down in your life. Do you call the person who's had one job their entire life and no instability? No. You call the person who has navigated wild shit kindly, who is
yep.
still a kind and decent person after all the shit. That's who I call first. That's who I trust for advice.
Yeah, and it depends on the scenario, right? I've got different people for different things. I'm like, oh, I need to let this out.
Yes. But you know you're supposed to call them, right? And that is something that you've had to train into yourself too, because our society would tell you that independence is something to admire, and it's just not. It also doesn't no data shows that being independent leads to better results in anything. Your life, your work, none of it.
Well, and I love also on the flip side, you've got that outward, you have to be able to, reach out to others. You have to be able to go out and find those truths, but also like managing that internal leadership. Get your base, get your home solid so you know where you stand from, where you're coming from, and that will help direct where you're going to go for your questions and your outward. But if you don't know where your base is, that's a tough place to be. So, in your book, like how do you talk about that? Like
Yeah.
that internal leadership that can help kind of lead to that external.
Yeah. The subhead for the book is how to like yourself while you lead your people. And I got really vulnerable in this book about the fact that I think our leadership traits are mirrored into us, that we suffer the consequences of a society of leaders who were promoted because they were good at their job, not because they know how to lead people. And we suffer. And unfortunately, the suffering doesn't make us different. The suffering makes us believe that that's what it takes. That's That's what you're supposed to
Learned.
do. Yeah, it is learned, even if we hate it. That's the scary part, and the part that I can't quite crack yet is why I would do something that I hated so much. You know?
In some part of our brain, I know, for example, from growing up in a very, I'll say, dictatorial household, uh, it was a my way or the highway, and if
Yeah.
you didn't like it, get out.
But it worked.
And but we'll save
Air
that conversation
quotes.
for another day.
I know.
But you learned a certain way, and you start to repeat these as a parent, and all of a sudden you have the realization, two things: one, I'm never going to do that; two, you realize, oh crap, I'm doing that, and I don't want to. So you revert course. You kind of have some self-awareness moments and realize, all right, that's not who I want to be. That's not who I want to be to my family, my coworkers, my team, my my friends, etc. And so you just have to make these conscious choices. I like how you said this as a secondary line about how to like yourself, because from a leader's perspective, I need to like them after I like me,
Yeah.
because it's all about them.
Well, because your reactions come from your shit. This is your pot that you react out of.
Yeah.
It is people act like, "Oh, well, they did this and that justifies their behavior." Like, "Well, if they hadn't done that, we wouldn't have had that conversation or I wouldn't behave that way." And you're like, "No, no, 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 no. You behave that way because of you.
You
You're
chose to.
reacting." Exactly. And it doesn't help that we live in a society where it's like our cortisol is constantly getting struck by fear because of a million things that are happening externally, a lot of little cues that we pick up over the years, like surprise meetings on our calendar, and all of a sudden people are having panic attacks at their desk. And now we expect people to be like rational, great decision makers who can lead people and keep folks calm while we're taking the next step. You're like, sure. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like showing you
You
cartoons
late.
and being like, get to work.
Where can we find you? Where can our listeners find you? I feel like you're everywhere. So like this is actually like a real question. The
Well,
first answer is everywhere, but what's that mean?
Not Montana.
literally in Rockford, Illinois, which is just like 10 miles from the Wisconsin border, about an hour outside of Chicago. And the joke that I like to make is that I am the
See, I don't
only
even know.
Katrina Kibben in the world. So if you spell my name right, you'll find me. If you spell my name wrong, you'll find a priest for the U.S. House of Representatives, and you'll know that you're in the wrong place because I am too gay for that job.
I mean, I don't know, but that feels right.
Yeah. There's a Katrina Kibben who's a priest for the U.S. House of Representatives.
Mm. Where
So
can
let's
people find your book?
Yes.
let's drill down.
It's at thebouncebackfactorbook.com. I got a whole landing page where you can learn about the team training we offer because I've really taken this book and tried to make it something practical that a team can practice because I think the bounce back factor is not like a afternoon with Kat. It's a muscle that you have to build over time, and it shows up the next time the uncertainty arises and just gives that confidence layer that the next time shit happens, which it will be prepared.
And I know,
Absolutely love it.
obviously, you mentioned you do a lot of keynotes, so I'm sure if people go to 3 Ears Media, you'll find a little bit more as well as on LinkedIn. And we'll include these links in the show notes where people can track where you're speaking next and where to find you and how to get in touch with you there.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
This has been fun. We didn't even need a segment. It was like the combo just like kept twisting and turning. Like I'm usually interested in every conversation, but like sometimes I'm just like sucked in. And today I was like totally sucked into your answers. Like, yeah, really, really good stuff to say. I'm
Thank you.
super, super glad you spent some time with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I got you twice. So I'm like, and I got the double dip and I'm thrilled for it and get some other insight stories and more about the book. So if you want to learn about the bounce back factor, we already shared with you where to go. Thanks, Katrina, for being here with us. We were so thrilled that you made time for us and look forward to more stories. Is there a third book on the way?
I literally cloned the file this morning.
Woo!
You heard it here.
That's a job.
Yep. Here it comes. It'll probably take me 3 years though, so don't get excited. But we'll all have this anniversary. When I release that book, you two will be my first call.
You're coming back and we better still be here.
Amazing.
This book should have been a podcast.
There's so much we can do with this title, I'm telling you.
Well, everybody, thank you for joining us. Tom, thanks for running the show and bringing Kat to the show. I think I mentioned earlier, chasing her thoughts and insights for 4 years now. So really excited. Thought this was a great show. Everyone, find us on the Work Defined Network or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for joining this meeting. Should have been a podcast.